Hey everyone, I'm Mike from theparkprodigy.com, and on today's video we're going to break down 25 of the best tips and tricks for your next Universal Orlando vacation. And we are slowly but surely coming down to the end of 2022, and that's why we're creating this video, getting everyone ready for the 2023 vacation and beyond. I guarantee you'll be able to use most of these tips and tricks no matter when you watch this video in the future. And what we did was we pretty much took a lot of what we learned over the past year and we brought it in, and we're adding onto a lot of the other tips and tricks videos that we have created over the past couple of months. So if you are in the process of planning a Universal vacation, I really hope that you find this helpful, and I hope that it saves you time and money while inside of the Universal Orlando theme parks. Of course, like all the other videos, I'm really excited, so let's go get started. Thank you all again so much for checking out this video. We have 25 little bullet points on this video, so I am going to jump right in and just get started. So with number 25, we would say make sure that you plan your stroller or electric vehicle rental options. Now, guests can rent strollers, wheelchairs, and electric convenience vehicles, ECVs, upon entrance to Universal Studios Florida, and of course, Islands of Adventure, and it's over to the left side of each park's main entrance. And taking it one step further, Universal suggests you place and request in advance for ECV rentals at least 1 week prior to your arrival. And this can be done by contacting guest services or by calling this number 407-224-4233. And the scooters cost $50 a day plus a $50 deposit, where the stroller rentals will cost $15 a day for a regular single stroller, and any of the double strollers will cost $25 per day. And of course, another quick note, they do require a $50 deposit. Now, specifically for those ECV, the scooters, if you need one and you absolutely know that like you can't risk them possibly selling out, you could also look into one of the options. They have the deliverable scooter companies down in Orlando. There's a lot of reputable companies, but that's starting the list at number 25. Over to number 24, and we would say don't forget to bring a battery charger. Now, since you'll be using the Universal Orlando app, which we might talk about in a bit, you will want to make sure to have a backup battery charger because most likely your phone might need to be charged throughout the day. And if you don't remember to bring one from home, Universal Orlando has the fuel rod charging ports throughout the park. You could purchase a fuel rod for about $30, and then when it goes dead, when let's say you even use that charge up, you could just easily swap it out for a brand new one. Now, over at Universal, it does cost around $3 at the time of this recording. However, over at Disney, it's the same fuel rod over at Disney. It is free. Okay, so moving on to number 23, and we would say don't forget to check showtimes and character meet and greets on the Universal Orlando app. Now, we highly recommend you download the Universal Orlando app before you even get down to Orlando, but as you get down there and once you're inside of the parks, make sure that you're using the app to check daily showtimes and figure out how to fit them into your daily itinerary. Now, we recommend catching at least one show at Universal Orlando because we really love them all. But if we did have to pick one, our favorite is the Bourne Spectacular in Universal Studios. The technology here is honestly out of this world. And if you check the Universal Orlando app, you can also see which rides or character encounters have a virtual line throughout the day if they do decide to bring that back into 2023. And one of the other things I will say is Universal, a lot of like what they do is kind of on the fly, specifically for the nighttime shows, right? Especially over at the Wizarding World of Harry Potter and Islands of Adventure. So it's just very important that you do have to be aware of that hey, there is going to be some what's going on, what time of these shows once you get to the park, because you don't want to miss them. Okay, so moving on to number 22, and we would say make sure you wear appropriate shoes. Now, of course, just like you can imagine, if you've never been to the theme parks, there is a lot of walking that goes on. We're talking like 6+ miles a day easily. I mean, some days me and my friends have walked 15, 16 miles within one day, right? Universal is no different, although it is a little bit smaller, but this is a theme park and you're going to be doing a lot of walking. So with that being said, it's very important that you give some thought to the type of shoes that you will be bringing to Orlando. And as I get older, as now I'm in my 30s, right, I have kind of really gone to the most comfortable shoes. I pretty much just wear Asics when I'm in the parks. They're running shoes, right? I have looked past trying to be cool. I always go for comfort when in the parks, and I do think that you at home should take that into consideration as well, because your feet will not be disappointed. Okay, moving on to number 21, and we would say make sure that you're prepared for the water rides. And this is where me and my team disagree a little bit, where I personally don't like water rides, especially when I'm in like the main two parks, but my team, they absolutely love the water rides over at Universal Orlando, specifically over at Islands of Adventure, where Universal has Popeye and Bluto's Bridge Rat Barges, Dudley Do-Right's Ripstraw Falls, and of course Jurassic Park River Adventure. Now, one of the appeals to the water rides is that these can be a blast, especially on a hot Florida day. With that being said, for most of these rides, you're going to get soaked, and I mean soaked. So you will have to make sure that you dry off. And going back to your shoes are going to be soggy and wet, right? You might want to bring a change of socks from home. And there also are human dryers right outside the ride. But more importantly, just be prepared. Think about the 3 rides that I just mentioned. And if you see them when you get to the parks, just know that you are going to get wet as you're getting on that line. All right, moving on to number 20. And this might be one of the most important ones on the list. Be aware of motion sickness. And what I mean by that is Universal Orlando, more so than Disney, has some amazing rides, but they also have a lot of moving, big screens, right? So with that being said, a lot of the rides over at Universal Orlando, we find that people are just more prone to motion sickness, specifically Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. And you might have heard me talk about this ride. I talk about it a lot, but this is by far one of the worst motion sickness rides that I've ever experienced. Now, of course, with that being said, there are ways of getting around it. I personally have found that Dramamine works very, very well. But just be prepared. Another one, that kind of comes to mind is the Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man. There's the Transformers ride as well. There's just a lot of the large screens kind of moving you around. So just be prepared as you get over to the parks. And there are also first aid stations located around the parks that do have Dramamine in case you forget it and you do want to take it once you get down there. Okay, so moving on to number 19, and this is another important one, especially for families who are visiting with young kids, and we would say know the height requirements ahead of time. Now, this is very, very important over at Universal, more so than Disney, who I keep talking about a lot, just because Universal right now doesn't have as much for the young kids to do as Disney, right? And that's where it gets very, very important that you understand the height requirements, and that might even impact, if you decide to go to Universal Orlando this year, or you might save it for a future trip when the kids are a little bit older and taller, right? So this is just another important thing. Get out the long measuring tape, figure out exactly how tall the kids are, and then come up with a game plan around that. And you'll know, there's nothing worse than getting expectations built up and then getting to the ride and realizing like, oh, just a little too short for this ride this year, right? So we just want to make sure that the families at home are prepared. You can also use child swap. Let's say if you have, more than one child and some of the kids want to go on the ride, but just one little one that's not tall enough just yet. Very simply, the way child swap works is you can all wait on the line together. Once you get to the front of the line, one parent can go on the rides with the kids. When they come back, the next parent can go on the ride if they want to experience it as well. Okay, so moving on to number 18, and we would say don't skip the single rider line. And of course, it is important to note that with the single rider line, your party will most likely be split up. However, this can cut your wait time down on a lot of the most popular rides significantly. And what it is essentially is just one person can go on to the ride, and you kind of get moved into an odd number group. So if there's 3 people in one group, you will be that 4th person. And just like it sounds, you'll go through a different line to get on the ride. Okay, so tip number 17 of the best tips for Universal Orlando. And we would say don't ride the first ride that you see. Now, this is especially true for Universal Studios Florida. And we have to give a huge shout out to Despicable Me Minion Mayhem, because this is when, without a doubt, will be the first ride you see. And that's why we suggest possibly going over to some of the other rides within the park to take advantage of lower wait times, specifically some of the rides further in the back. Okay, number 16, and we would say be aware of the different package pickup services that they have throughout the parks. Now, Universal has a lot of great merchandise that you probably want to bring home as a souvenir, and Universal also offers great service called package pickup. Now, essentially what this is, you could purchase something inside the parks and send it to the Universal store in City Walk so that you could pick it up at the store as you're leaving that night. And essentially just what this allows you to do is there's nothing worse than, buying a bunch of souvenirs and then you have to lug that bag around all day, right? This is essentially a way to avoid that. Another way is you could, of course, rent a locker and you could put your souvenirs in the locker, but you still have to walk to that locker and then you got to walk over there. It might be out of the way depending on which park you're leaving from. We just feel like this one is a really, really convenient option, especially if you are bringing your car, if you parked, because the large store is essentially right on the walk back to the parking garage at night. Okay, so moving on to number 15, and we would say be aware of the special events going on throughout the year. And of course, this is important for a couple of different reasons, mostly because you might want to take advantage of one of the amazing events over at Universal Orlando. In January, you have the Christian Music Festival. In February through March, you have Mardi Gras. In September through October, you have Halloween Horror Nights. And then in November through December, you do have Christmas over at Universal Orlando. And this is important because Halloween Horror Nights and the Christian Music Festival are separately ticketed events. But with that being said, on the flip side, Mardi Gras and Christmas are included in your park ticket. And the other important thing to understand about the separate ticketed events is that the parks might close a little bit earlier, specifically Universal Studios Florida might close a little bit earlier on those nights. So you want to be prepared and plan around that, because you might need to make sure you plan to go over to Islands of Adventure, let's say, if you want to get a couple extra hours out of your day. And then one last tip and trick regarding special events. For Mardi Gras, the summer, Halloween Horror Nights, and Christmas, Universal puts on a tribute store located right next to the Race Through New York with Jimmy Fallon. And this is included with your ticket, and it's really cool to check out. In the years past, they've done some really, really amazing stuff. It's just a big merchandise store, but with that being said, they have a lot of really, really cool, like nostalgia, memorabilia, and stuff like that inside the store. So we highly recommend you check it out. Okay, moving on to number 14, and we would say get celebration buttons. Now, celebration buttons are something that have become so popular within both Disney and Universal Orlando. But if you are celebrating a special occasion, you want to be sure to let everyone know that you are celebrating, right? And that's specifically for birthdays or anniversaries, anything that you might be celebrating, spring break, Christmas break, right? Let the world know. And Universal has some amazing celebration buttons, and they are free. So if you want to wear them around the parks to celebrate and to get the buttons, all you got to do is go and stop over at Guest Relations. Okay, so we are about halfway through our list of the 25 best tips and tricks for Universal Orlando. And I just wanted to thank you all again so much for checking out this video, and just remind everyone, if you are in the process of planning a Universal trip, and if you are finding this video helpful to this point, just be sure to go and subscribe to our channel, as we do have a lot more similar videos coming out in the coming weeks that could help you save time and money inside the parks. Okay, so keeping the party rolling and moving on to number 13, and we would say consider a refillable popcorn bucket. Now, the refillable popcorn buckets get a lot of love over at Disney, and we just wanted to make sure to mention Universal Orlando. The other reason why we love the popcorn buckets is because they can be a great, cheap way for families to have snacks throughout their visit. And the reason being is, as of the recording of this video, you could purchase a Universal refillable popcorn bucket for $12.99 or $28 and up for one of the character buckets, such as the Grinch or the Minions. But then your first fill of popcorn is free, and then refills are $2 after. So as you can see, this could be a really, really cheap way for families to snack on popcorn throughout their Universal Orlando vacation. Moving on to number 12, and we have, make sure you check out the food options before you arrive. Of course, because there's nothing worse than being hot and hungry inside the parks, and trust us, we have been there, and you'll want to make sure that you understand and kind of have your eyes set on specific restaurants. And if you are planning to do any sit-down restaurants, specifically over at City Walk, you will want to make a reservation. So we just want to make sure that we mention it, give some thought to exactly where you would like to go before you get there. Okay, so moving on to number 11, and we've talked about it a little bit getting up to this point, but we would say make sure that you download the Universal Orlando app and you get as familiar as possible with it. Now, I'm not going to get into this because we've actually just did an entire video on the best tips and tricks for the Universal Orlando app. We will leave a link in the show notes, but this is going to be an intricate part of your vacation. I highly recommend you go and watch that video just so you are prepared once you get down to Orlando. But long story short, download the app before you get down, get as familiar with it as possible before you get down, and then your days are going to run so much smoother once you get to Orlando. Okay, so moving on to number 10, and we would say know how to ride the Hogwarts Express. Now, specifically, this is an important one because the Hogwarts Express is not just an ordinary ride, but you will need a park-to-park ticket in order to ride this attraction, specifically because it allows you to pretty much go from Universal Studios Florida and park hop over to Islands of Adventure and vice versa, right? This is by far one of the most popular questions we receive. Mike, is the park-to-park ticket worth it for the Hogwarts Express? And truthfully, every family is different, so it's really, really difficult for me to answer that, right? Because some folks might enjoy the ride a lot more, and some folks might only be coming to Universal one time, and you got to get everything off the bucket list, right? What I will say is, if you're unsure, go with the base ticket, and you can always upgrade once you get down there. Now, with that being said, is that the most convenient, right? You will have to like stop and they have people right outside the ride essentially to upgrade the tickets. Universal is very smart about that. So it won't be too inconvenient, but you do have to stop and you have to upgrade your ticket. But with that being said, if you're unsure, I always downsell and say go with the base because you could upgrade later on. And then you can just get a feel for if you want to go on the ride once you get down there. If you know that you need to go on this ride, then you need the park-to-park ticket, and just make sure that those are the options that you're looking for as you're buying your tickets. Okay, moving on to number 9, and we would say be familiar with the interactive wands in the parks. Now, if you would like to make the most out of your Wizarding World experience, you can purchase an interactive wand in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. Now, with an interactive wand, witches and wizards can cast spells around Hogsmeade and Diagon Alley. And again, we feel like this can be another great way for families with young kids to just get that much more out of their day, because maybe you have some restrictions from a ride standpoint, height requirement standpoint, right? But this is just another really, really fun way that the kids can, enjoy their vacation and enjoy the parks. And this is especially something that they do not have over at Disney. So we just wanted to make sure to point it out. And we do have a full video showcasing everything you need to know about the interactive wands on our YouTube channel. So be sure to go check that out. And we will, of course, leave another link to that video as well. Okay, so moving on to number 8, and we would say consider staying at a Universal Orlando hotel. Now, staying on site at a Universal hotel is one of the best tips to make your vacation that much more epic. Now, all of the Universal Orlando hotels have great benefits such as early park admission, free and easy transportation to and from the parks, free merchandise delivery back to the resort, resort-wide charging privileges, and something cool that we actually learned from one of our YouTube subscribers. I got to give a huge shout out to Patrick for this one, and you can actually pool hop over at Universal Orlando. So if you want to check out the pool in Lazy River over at Cabana Bay, but you're staying at Royal Pacific, you can. And again, we just think it's so much more convenient to stay at a Universal Orlando hotel, specifically when you are planning to spend a lot of times at the Universal Park. Okay, moving on to number 7, and we would say make sure that you know what to pack, make sure that you know what to bring from home. Now, this is really, really important just because not only is it going to save you money once you get down to Orlando, but it's also going to save you time as you won't have to go looking for these items. Now, some of the most popular items that we feel will definitely be useful in Orlando are going to be sunscreen, ponchos, maybe some umbrellas, refillable water bottles, cooling towels, cooling fans, lanyards for your tickets, especially if you're going on some of the water rides, and then, of course, just some snacks throughout the day just to keep everyone energized. Okay, over to number 6, and we would say have a game plan going into your day. Now, before your trip, make sure you watch some YouTube videos or look at park maps and ride lists so you can plan for your experience once you get down to Orlando. And we've seen this constantly. If you go in to the parks, especially if this is your first time, if you go in without a game plan, you're going to just be wasting precious time in the parks, and there could be some things that you might miss because it can be extremely overwhelming, especially in the hot Florida heat. So that's why it's just so much more important to make sure that you do have a solid plan. And if you're unsure where to start, just reach out to a company. You can reach out to us, theparkprodigy.com. We do have a bunch of free vacation planning tools, and part of what we do for our clients is if you do need that additional help, anyone who does get their discounted theme park tickets from us or a vacation package will help you come up with custom itineraries for your days in the parks. Okay, so moving on to number 5, and we would say make sure you know what's new. Now, if you haven't visited Universal Orlando in a few years, or this might be your first time, you'll want to know what the most popular attractions are so you can plan around them. Now, specifically right now in the parks, we do have over at Islands of Adventure, the Velocicoaster, and of course, Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure. Over at Universal Studios Florida, we have the Bourne Stuntacular. But some very, very exciting news. Universal Orlando just announced that opening in the summer of 2023 is the Illuminations Villain Con Minion Blast attraction. Now, this will take place of the Shrek 4D over at Universal Studios Florida. And the Illuminations Villain Con Minions Blast is an interactive blaster game experience that will invite guests to put their villainous skills to the test as they compete against each other in a bid to join the ranks of the franchise's most infamous supervillains. Essentially, this is a Minions-based ride, and Universal is pretty much building a little Minions section of the park. The area around this attraction is being rethemed to Illumination Avenue, and this new area will also feature the fan favorite Despicable Me Minion Mayhem attraction, a new Minion Cafe, and other surprises inspired by favorite characters from Illumination's blockbusters franchises. Another new out-of-park attraction that opened up in December of 2022 is the Universal's Great Movie Escape in Universal City Walk. Now, since it's in City Walk, you will not need a park ticket to get tickets to the escape room, and prices start at $49.99 per person plus tax for access to either Jurassic World Escape or Back to the Future at a time. Okay, over to number 4, and we would say no when it's crowded. Now, of course, there's a lot that goes into this, but essentially, if you are trying to get the most out of your days in the parks, you might want to visit during one of the slower times of year. Now, typically, the busier times of year are going to be winter break, which is right around the second week of February. There's also the holiday weekend in February that you will want to avoid if you're trying to avoid the crowds. Once you get over to spring break, it's the first week of March, essentially through the third week of April. Memorial Day weekend, then we jump over to summer vacation, end of June, really through the middle of August, Thanksgiving break, and of course, Christmas break. And if you are trying to pinpoint some of the slower times of year over at Universal Orlando, we do have an Orlando crowd calendar, which we will also leave a link in the show notes that you can go and check out. Okay, so moving on to number 3, and we would say know when to buy the Express Pass. And of course, we understand that it might not always be possible to visit during some of the slower times of year. So this is something that a lot of families consider and trying to figure out, like, is the Universal Express Pass the right fit for me? And it's a tough decision, especially because in a lot of situations, the Universal Express Pass is going to be more than the actual admission ticket. And that's why it's so important. We talk about a lot of the same stuffs on this channel, and that's why it's so important. And we do talk about a lot of the same stuff on this channel, but it kind of all ties in together, right? Coming up with a game plan, figuring out which rides you want to go on, which rides can the kids go on, because once you start, like full picture, well, if you know that you can't go on every single ride in Universal Florida, or you don't even want to go on every single ride within the parks, then you might not need the Express Pass. That's like a simple no, it's not the right fit. But if you know that you're trying to get absolutely every ride, on your bucket list out of the way, and you only have a day to do it or 2 days to do it, then yes, you might want to consider the Universal Express Pass. So as you can see, there's just so many different moving parts, and that really is the way that we help families figure out, like, what is your ride list? What would you like to go on? Do you need a hotel? Because if you upgrade and you stay at one of the premier resorts at Universal Orlando, you could potentially get the Express Passes for free. If you stay at one of the premier resorts, you get the Express Pass for free, right? So these are the questions that we're trying to help you all at home ask, because it can have a major impact on your trip. And one other tip and trick that we will say to save some money: the further in advance that you do purchase your Express Passes, the cheaper it will be. And the main reason is the price will continue to go up as you get closer to your trip. And another important thing is that the Universal Express Pass can sell out on the very, very busy days. So if you know that you want it, there's really no benefit to waiting. We always recommend to buy it in advance. Check out the ticket options. Universal also has some great combo options that we have on our site, which is kind of a bundle and save deal. So it could be a little bit more affordable than you think if you look at these other options outside of buying it one day at a time. Okay, so over to tip number 2, and we would say don't forget about early park admission and use early park admission when you can. And if you've been watching our videos, you already know that we love early park admission here at the Park Prodigy, just because we really think that it does help you get so much more out of your day. And one of the main reasons is early park admission is specifically for the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, and now, of course, the Velocicoaster, which, they are the most popular rides. Over at Islands of Adventure, you have Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure. You have the Velocicoaster, which we just discussed. You have Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey, which is the motion sickness ride inside of Hogwarts Castle. And then over at Universal Studios Florida, you have Harry Potter and the Escape from Gringotts. So just like it sounds, these are the most popular rides in the park. And later on in the day, mid-afternoon, the wait times are going to be really, really long. So that's why it is to your advantage. If you know you want to go on these rides and you can get early park admission, then you definitely want to take advantage of it, because it will save you so much time later in the day. And again, if you're trying to game plan, just go over to theparkprodigy.com and we'll help you figure out exactly how to tackle your days in the park using early park admission. We have some really, really great pre-made park plans that you could essentially just plug and play and go and just enjoy your day. And they are taking the early park admission into account. One other really, really cool tip and trick that I will say to kind of combine the last 2 tips that we have talked about is if you are upgrading to the Universal Express Pass and you do have the early park admission, then one of the things that we recommend is go and tackle the rides that aren't included with the Express Pass. These are specifically the Jurassic Park Velocicoaster and Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure. These 2 rides are not included with the Express Pass. So we always recommend, if you're going with the Express Pass, to kind of double down and use it with early park admission, because you can go in for early park admission as long as Islands of Adventure is open, and Universal's pretty much been leaning towards that, you can get those 2 rides out of the way with early park admission, and then you can go and tackle all the other rides that are included with the Express Pass. So in that way, you're not wasting time throughout the day, and you're really getting the most out of that upgraded experience by buying the Express Pass. Okay, so moving over to number 1, and we're going to kick back a little bit. I know this was a long list, and I really, really appreciate everyone who stuck around till the end, but we are going to say make sure that you try a Wizarding World of Harry Potter Butterbeer. And we all know that planning a Universal trip, and once you get down to the parks, it can be stressful, and that's why it's so important to make sure that you're relaxed and you enjoy the little things. And we think the Butterbeer is such a unique and specific experience and specific treat to Universal Orlando, so that's why we had to add it at number 1. The other cool thing that we love is it does come in various forms, and you can enjoy it hot, cold, frozen, fudge, or our favorite, which is the ice cream Butterbeer. And of course, this can be found in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. And so that is the list, everyone, from 25 all the way down to 1. Those are some of the best tips and tricks for your next Universal Orlando trip. I really, really hope that you found this video helpful. I know it was a long one, but we did try to get a lot of information into one video to help you be as prepared as possible for your next Universal trip. And if you are in the process of planning a Universal trip and you do need a little additional help, just be sure to go check out our website, theparkprodigy.com. But I do think that's all the time we have for today. Thank you again so much. Until next time, I will talk to you soon.